think May might have been my best reading month yet. We're going to talk about 5 different books, which is a big number for me. Now, one of them is short stories, one of them's a play, one of them's a graphic novel, which changes up reading time a little bit, but that's still really fun. And they were all really good. Um, though I have some mixed feelings and interesting experiences with some of them. Hi, hello, welcome in. I'm Jerica, and I'm an editor, writer, and all-around content creator, and this is my May reading recap. I don't think I have anything else to say about it. I'm kind of ready to just get into talking about the books. So, the first one that I finished this month was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I did start this back in April, but I finished it in May, so we're going to talk about it. 5 stars. It was a very good book. It was very enjoyable to read. I think the aspect that stands out the most to me is character. Um, but there's a lot of good things going on here. I think the reason character stands out to me so much is because Evelyn Hugo is such a complicated and honest look at a human being. Um, and I think it's interesting that she's kind of honest about it herself in most ways. Meaning that, like, she knows that a lot of the choices she made were maybe selfish, maybe morally gray, maybe even morally bad or evil. Uh, but she doesn't regret them. She'd do them all again, and she makes that clear. And I think that this, and I think, like, we also look at, like, how she feels about who she is. And I just think it's, like, a really interesting look at, um, like, being honest with yourself about your choices, too. Something else that is a fantastic thing, I think, is that it hits a lot of kind of like big societal issues, but never feels like it's just checking off boxes. Um, it kind of just like so happens that the main character is um, like a Latino woman who, ooh, is that spoilers? I can't decide if that's spoilers or not. I feel like it is, but I also feel like it comes in pretty early. I'm gonna not say it. Um, uh, but it never feels like it's trying to hit all of those things. It's kind of just like there happen to be characters that fall into all of the like big societal things, whether it be class, race, um, gender, or sexuality. I think one of my favorite sections of the book is watching the characters during, oh my god, I'm an idiot. I have to look it up. Is it Stonewall? Yeah, okay, I was right. The Stonewall riots. I think that section is super good, and I think that there is a quote that I will talk about in the full review of this book, because I do think that it gets to some spoilers, just because it's so far into the book. It's kind of talking about a lot of characters and like where they are at in life. And so I don't want to spoil it here. I guess like the final thing, something that I tend to talk about a lot, is the structure of it. This is a dual timeline technically, uh, but the two timelines are like very attached, if that makes sense. Like sometimes dual timeline is like we're following two separate stories, and they don't really like um intersect in any sort of way, but because the dual timeline, the past timeline is being told by a present character in the present timeline, it's like almost not dual timeline. It's simply like a story within a story, if that makes sense. But it is technically dual timeline. And uh, I like the way that that's set up, the way that our like modern timeline, our contemporary timeline, uh, is like the interview, and so you'll get like little bits of the story that is the past timeline. You'll get them told in the present timeline, and then it'll kind of like switch perspectives and you're back in time kind of thing. I just think that was a really fun choice in like how to do a dual timeline. And I do think the prose is actually just really nice. I think it's well written, like down to the line level. But let's move on to the next book that I read, which was our graphic memoir Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. Obviously, it's a little bit different reading a graphic novel to reading a novel, and a huge part of reading a graphic novel is the pictures. Um, but let's talk about the narrative first. I think the first thing that I want to discuss about the narrative is how um, each chapter, especially in the beginning, will sometimes like go over the same sort of events again, but like through a different lens. And it's very clear what lens we're going to be looking at it through, like from the chapter titles, if that makes any sense. Uh, I did not know anything about the narrative really going into this, so there's kind of like some shocking realizations that happen. And I won't spoil them in case you're also coming into this novel not knowing all of the particulars of the parent-child relationship between Alison Bechdel and her father, and the specifics of her father's life, because that's kind of like the focus of this. We do touch on, obviously it's about Alison Bechdel, and it is about like her coming out, it is about her coming of age, it is about her struggles with mental illness, and it is also about her relationship with her father, and some interesting kind of parallels, as well as like stark differences, if that makes any sense. And yeah, I think that the narrative isn't what I was expecting at all. And also the realization of what fun home actually means. That's a really fun little tidbit too. Very much a multiple meaning title here. Yeah, definitely some stuff that I just like wasn't really expecting. I think the focus on the mental illness was a really interesting section of the book. Um, and then we can get into the actual graphics of it. Um, I do really like the style. It's it's not monochromatic. It's like duochromatic, I guess, because it's I mean, technically it's monochromatic because it is black, white, and then like this like watercolor wash of blue. I can show you. Um, I think you can see that. So I mean, technically monochromatic because black and white are a tint and shade of blue because they're a tint and shade of everything. Um, but so, something that I really, really enjoyed paying attention to the graphics was just like these little breadcrumbs or Easter eggs of things. And I want to talk about one of them so badly because it's the one that I like keep remembering, but it is a spoiler. So you'll have to wait until I do a full review, or maybe I put in a little spoiler here. I'm gonna find a picture of it um, because it's here a couple of times. Oh, that's something that's actually really interesting that's not spoilers, is you'll see illustrations at like very different parts of the novel that are depicting the same scene but from a different angle, and I thought that was like super cool. Um, yeah, so spoilers. Um, Literally every time this sunbeam loaf of bread shows up, I laugh because her father was hit by a sunbeam truck. And so it's like, it's very clear, just like a constant nod to that fact, which I found hilarious. I don't know if it's supposed to be funny, but I found it funny. Just like it's just like the smallest little detail, and there are other small little details like that. Not necessarily like in a funny way, but just like a lot of little details that I think um are worth like paying attention to. So again, great book. This month really knocked it out of the park because the next book was also amazing. This is Monstrilio. Um, Again, not really what I was expecting going in. I think I think I wasn't thinking about the fact that it's a literary horror. I think that's like the biggest thing. Is that like I was kind of just like expecting like a monster book, which was like my bad. Like I should have known that it wasn't just a monster book, based on the fact that oh my gosh, based on the fact that it is a literary horror. So it's very emotional. Um, it's very much about like the ideas of grief and family and identity and loyalty and uh, it's just like yeah, there's a lot in it. Kind of like there was a lot in Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. There's like a lot in here. Like I feel like you could read it like multiple times and like really get like new thoughts out about it. Some of the things that I want to talk about are definitely in spoiler range, just like the way that characters were like reacting and the choices that they made. Definitely a book that has a lot of like difficult choices and probably a lot of readers sitting there like, how could you make that choice? Because I know I was sitting there like, how could you make that choice? Um, and I don't mean the inciting incident of cutting out the child's lung and then like growing it into a creature, um but like everything that comes after that. Uh yeah. Something that because of the cover I was thinking about a lot while I was reading this is the cover says it has a quote that says bizarre and brilliant, a modern Frankenstein. And I kind of went into this thinking that it was going to be more about a vampire than about like a creature, but at the same time it makes a lot of sense to consider it like a Frankenstein because it is like a created creature. Not really in the same way because it's like grown from like a single piece instead of a bunch of pieces like cobbled together. But I was thinking about Frankenstein a lot, like while reading it, especially since I read Frankenstein last year for the first time, and then also watched the movie and like had a lot of thoughts. And I said I was gonna make a video about it, I haven't, and I'm sorry. But while I can see like some similarities, there's kind of like a huge difference. And I don't think this is spoiling because I think it's very clear, but um, I mean, maybe it's not. I'll put up a mild spoilers warning here because um, the main deviation is kind of like a huge piece of the puzzle for the story. In Frankenstein, Victor hates his creature. He's like terrified of this creation and he leaves it out on its own. Whereas in this, the creature that's created is loved. I was going to add a qualification to that, but the qualification is not true. um, but it's just very different. Like the creator of the creature like sticks around, whereas in Frankenstein, the creature is shunned. I just think that that's like a really interesting thing. Like obviously there are similarities, but this is like if Victor decided to love his creature, I guess. If he had more of a bond to his like child. Um yeah. Anyways, it was really good. Um I I hesitate to like call it a horror. I mean, yeah, no, it's a horror. Never mind. I take that back right away. It's just like not like it's not a scary horror. It's very I mean, it's magical realism, and like the realism is like heavy in it. Like obviously there's the Monstrilio, but other than that, like it really is just like a story that could happen, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. I did really love this book. I definitely highly recommend it. Uh, I think the interiority is really good. And oh, and the other thing is that it's split into four pieces, each a different POV. And I think that was a really interesting choice. And I think there's one of the four has an extremely distinct voice, and I really, really like it. And the other three, like, uh, I mean, like, it's very clearly like from those characters' perspectives, but because the perspective of one of them is so different, it's like very starkly distinct, if that makes sense, and it makes so much sense. Anyways, good one. Um, Technically, next I read a short story, but we'll talk about the two short stories I read at the end, and instead we'll talk about Brebeuf's Ghost. This is a play. And I feel like a lot of my thoughts have to do more with reading a play than reading Brebeuf's Ghost, although I will talk about that as well. Um, the I've never read a play like for pleasure. All of the plays that I've read have been for school, either high school or university. Um, and I went into this like not really knowing how to enjoy reading a play, if that makes any sense. Um, and I'm not sure that I did enjoy reading a play. That isn't to say that I didn't enjoy the narrative of this. I just feel like I would have much preferred it if I could see the like visual and hear the voices of live theater, or if I had gotten more of the description in a novel. I don't think that I can truly enjoy just reading a play. I was trying really hard to like picture a play. And like specifically a play and not um like not a movie, not real life, not the way that I would picture a novel, but like try to actually picture a play the way that I think that actors would do the theater of the play. And I think this is like very influenced by the plays that I have seen, and most of the plays that I have seen have been like school plays, so like high school students. Um and that isn't to say that high school students can't do a good job of a play. I just think that there are probably some very specific things that high school students do that not necessarily every like theater troupe would do, if that makes any sense. Because something that was like very specific, and maybe this happens in like regular theater, but like the sound of steps on a stage, the sound of props on a stage, like I was trying to hear those things. I was trying to like hear the folly. Like every time that they mentioned like thunder and lightning, I was like trying to hear the like whoop 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 of like the like metal making those sounds, you know? And like when they mention like spotlights or like lights glowing around things, I was really trying to picture it the way that it would in theater, and I think that did help me really enjoy it, or like enjoy it as much as I did. I don't think that I'm going to go out of my way to read plays. That being said, the narrative of this is really interesting. I love that there are like multiple conflicts going on at the same time. Um, because there's the conflict, like the general conflict of the Frenchmen, the French Catholics, and I separate those two for a reason, because the book separates those two things. Uh, because like all Frenchmen are probably Catholics at this point. Like all of these Frenchmen are probably Catholics, but there are people who like are with the church, and then there are people who like are just like traitors, and they've like come from France, kind of thing. And I think there's an important distinction, and I think the play makes that distinction as well. I can't talk about that too much, but one of my favorite parts of it does have to do with that distinction. But then there's also the like closer to home almost. Oh, there's actually two more conflicts. There's the like people v people, like a second people v people, the Iroquois versus the Ojibwe or Ojibwa. Um, I did look up the Iroquois thing. Technically, both correct, but also maybe not the appropriate word to use. In the play, they refer to them both as Iroquois and as Mohawk. Both of those, from what I understand, are not like the most appropriate word for that nation, and it's actually Haudenosaunee. I think that's how you say it. But I mean, this was written a while ago, so I mean, maybe like maybe it was written for the audience, maybe it was written because like in that way because that's like what the Ojibwe would call them. Because a lot of the like calling nations by certain names like is like what the nation calls themselves, and that's the most appropriate if we know what that is and we're talking about specific nations, that's what we should use, kind of thing. um but like this is being told from the perspective of the Ojibwe community. Anyways, that's kind of a side thing. I just actually remembered to look it up because this is the third time that I'm talking about this book in a video. um so anyways, Iroquois and Iroquois are both like equally appropriate um pronunciations from what I can find. Feel free to correct me in the comments if you happen to be Iroquois or Mohawk or Haudenosaunee. I hope I'm saying. I should have pulled that up so that I can see it in front of me. I think I'm saying the syllables in the right order. Anyways, then there's the third conflict, which is people v nature, kind of. And that is the idea of the hunger, which is something else I want to bring up because they use the bad word on the back. They use the windy guy word on the back, but it's never once said in the play. I don't know if that's like purposeful, but um, I don't know. They generally call it the hunger um, in the book, and if you know the folklore of the hunger, then like you understand that. Um, but that's like a whole other conflict, and that conflict very much like intertwines with other conflicts as kind of becoming the same conflict but being its own conflict at the same time. Something else that I found interesting is because there is this idea of the hunger and the like folklore inspiration. This like I wouldn't call it a magical realism, but I would say that it has like ever so subtle touches of magical realism in it. Um, I just don't like I don't think it actually falls into the genre, if that makes sense. It's definitely just like a historical fiction with folklore as like a piece of it. Um Anyways, I did really enjoy the story. I would love to see this play performed or see like a short film made out of it or something. Um because I especially once we get to the third act, like the first two acts I'm like, okay, okay. And then like the third act is like, oh, okay. Which I mean kind of makes sense. Like generally there is a build up to the third act. The third act usually has like the biggest punch. Um I think something that like for whatever reason was difficult for me was keeping track of like who the characters were, because they like when you're watching a play it's very easy to like see who they are, and when you're reading a novel it I don't know, I feel like I just like get a better understanding of like who each person is because of like all of the like exposition around them. And it isn't to say like I mean it literally tells you who's talking, but like remembering who all of the cast is and all of those relationships was a little bit harder for me. I feel like that came out of like left field, but that was something that I wanted to mention about like reading a play. I don't know if it's like this play specific or like I don't know. It was just like it was a big cast, and I definitely struggled to remember like which person was who a couple of times. But by probably like halfway through, like I was doing pretty good at remembering who was who. Um, yeah, I don't know. That was like a weird piece of like just the play. Although I guess I do that with novels sometimes too, where I just like it take especially with large casts, especially with like classic Russian literature, trying to remember who everybody is, can kind of like be a difficult task. And I did find that with this, and I was blaming it on it being a play. Um, I'm like less sure now that I'm thinking about it, but I still want to blame it on it being a play. Because I mean, I think they're like distinct characters. And like I could tell you who they are now, I think. um, yeah, anyways. It was good. I would highly recommend finding somebody who is putting on the play. Okay. The last one to talk about is the two short stories from the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, Volume 1. One of them I thought was great, and the other one I have extremely mixed feelings about because it felt like it was very experimental. So let's talk about that one first. That one was called Fondly Fahrenheit by Albert something. Nope. Alfred Bester. Um, this one felt like it was a little experimental. Uh, I'm going to try not to spoil it too much, but it kind of like does run through the thing, and the reason that it's done is a spoiler. So I won't tell you the reason it's done, but it's confusing in its pronoun use throughout. Um, like it's kind of written in first person, but it's also kind of written in third person. And there is like an in story reason for this, but you don't find out until much later in the book, like very, very close to the end. Um, and so it's like very discombobulating, but it's kind of meant to be. Uh, But because I didn't know the reason, I just felt like confused and annoyed reading through it, trying to figure out like who the I was, if that makes any sense. And so like when it's finally like revealed like who the I is, you kind of go like, oh, and like I almost wanted to read it again with that in mind, but I feel like it loses all of its purpose at that point. So I think it's a good short story. Especially since short stories are a great place to play around with experimental stuff. Like I could never read a whole novel with the kind of like confusion of it. So I think it was a good short story. I think I didn't love it. So like objectively, subjectively, because I mean, it's always subjective, but like objectively, like thinking about like why the choices were made, I think it was good. I think I just wasn't a huge fan of being confused for so long. There were other aspects of it that I really, really liked. There's kind of like a the title, Fondly Fahrenheit. That's kind of like reused over and over again, slightly changed. And I think that that was a really fun thing to do. Um, and it was, this is kind of a spoiler, but it's a breadcrumb for kind of like the end reveals of like what's actually happening. The other one was That Only a Mother, I think it's called. Yeah, That Only a Mother by Judith Merril. This one I thought was really good, and again, it was another one that was like, um, it was a little odd, but like I mean, this one it was a little odd in the best way, and it wasn't like super confusing. And the end reveal is like, because kind of like up until the reveal, you're like, what is this story really about? Like what are we missing here? And again, it's like so purposeful that like you're missing something, if that makes sense. Uh, yeah, it was really interesting. And I mean, I guess it's kind of like a commentary on like unconditional love. Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting. I feel like I do want to like talk more about it like in a very spoilery way. Maybe I'll write something about it. Maybe I'll write something about both of these. Maybe that's what I do. Maybe I Substack post about some of these short stories. Because I think I want to read a couple more from this. Uh, Especially since we've made it to we've done 2 months of the quarter, and I'm in the books that were like not really on the list, if that makes sense. And one of them I'm moving to next quarter just because I think that that makes sense. And so I think I might read another short story or two. I do have like a not on the TBR book that I might read as well. Um, but yeah, I do just generally want to read more short stories. Apparently, I found out last month, May, was short story month or something like that. Wish I would have known because I definitely would have done something with that knowledge, but it's fine. Um, I think that's the end of of the reading recap. So, uh, the rest of the quarter, I'm currently reading the Fran Drescher memoir. We'll talk about that at the end of the month. And then I have another book lined up, and then we'll be looking at into the next quarter. Um, and also because it's June, we've been reading a bunch of like queer rep. I did do a video. It's already up with a bunch of queer recommendations for you. Uh, that's the end. So let me know what you got up to last month. Did you have another great reading month like I did? Another, boatload of great books. Did you have a couple of duds? Did you DNF anything? Let me know. Also, let me know if you've read any of these books, and if you were as much in awe as I have been, or maybe you weren't and you think I'm so silly for enjoying these books as much as I have. I'd love to hear those opinions as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had fun. I had a blast. Catch you next time. Bye.